Welcome back to Henry's Garage, and apologies for my absence. In early October, I visited my parents and did some electrical work on re-aiming, but I didn't record it. I'm visiting again, and this is a quick update on the work I did previously. First, I installed the wiper motor and mechanism, which I had taken home to refurbish as seen in the last episode on re-aiming. Annoyingly, I couldn't find the new nut for the wheel box, which I remember putting in a safe place when I picked it to head north. I still cannot remember where that safe place is or find the nut, and it's several weeks later now. But with it connected up and part fitted, I tested the wipers and they work. A relatively good start. I then tried fitting the new blades to the wiper arms and they do not match. It is very frustrating. Next, the hazard lights. I started by removing and testing each bulb and cleaning up the bulb holders so there was a clean contact. I then moved on to cleaning all connectors for the wires. Both were done with a little sandpaper and some contact cleaner. I was getting 12 volts to the left hand side at this point, but no flash. I disconnected the repeater connection and the left hand side started to work. I am still trying to work out why. But I could not get the right hand side to work. With this in mind, I moved on to the indicators. Having already cleaned up the connection to the left hand side, it was working, as long as the repeater was disconnected. The right hand side would switch on, but not flash. The wiring to the lights is the same for both indicators and the hazard. The route from the power to lights is different through the hazard switch, but both go through the switch. When the hazard switch is off, the two contacts on the top are connected and power travels through them to the flasher indicator flasher unit and onto the switch on the steering wheel. When the hazard switch is on, the power comes in through the bottom half of the switch and powers the other three nodes. This then sends power to the lights. I concluded the hazard switch was broken. I took it off the car and took it apart and cleaned it up with sandpaper and contact cleaner, but it still didn't work. With the unit together but off the car, I could check the connections. With the switch on, 3 of the 4 contacts at the bottom were connected. The connector leading to the right hand side signal was not connected. To cut a long story short and to avoid removing the switch again now, so that I can show you what I mean, we applied solder to the contact to ensure it connected in the on position. We actually applied too much solder and it stopped the connection to the left hand side. But with a bit of filing, both started to work on the car. So it was reinstalled and both hazard lights now work. At this point, I started working on the indicator lights. Remember, the left indicator is working from the work on the hazard lights, but I have problems with the right indicator. When I came back to trying to sort out the right indicator, I concluded the issue was the flasher unit. I found a test for the flasher unit on the internet. To test it, you connect the power to the flasher input, the bulb to the output, and then the positive of the bulb to the output, and then you connect the earth back up to the flasher unit from the bulb. If the flasher doesn't work at all, or if it stays on, then the unit is faulty. If the flash is good, then the unit will flip on and off, on and off. I tested them both at my dad's and then I brought them home, and the video here is me testing them at home. I don't understand why the left hand side was working and not the right hand side, but you can see the results that my home one works and the others don't. Fixing the side lights was relatively quick because I had already cleaned up the contacts in the wires and at the bulbs and tested the bulbs. But they would not come on every time when I moved the master light switch to the first position. It needed to move to the second position and then back up. I cleaned up the switch and everything worked. Sweet. The headlights took a long time to work out, and I cannot remember all the trouble I was having with them. But I was getting power all the way to the lights, but they were not coming on. I removed and tested the lights and they seemed to work. Initially, I had a grounding problem, but after a night off, I remembered having problems with a slightly low battery. So I connected to John's Stag battery and tested again. Success! Partly. And this is a note to self. I need to ensure I've always got my battery fully charged. Beams are now working, but only one dip. I swapped the lights to ensure it wasn't the wiring, then I retested everything and found the dip wasn't working off the car either. So it must have been on, the bulb must have been on its last legs. I had 2 boxed bulbs in the boot, so out came one, tested it, and it also had no dip. I then took out the second one and still no dip. It seems those 2 bulbs that came with the car were old bulbs, which would explain why the boxes were so ragged. Replacement headlights have been ordered and I'm swapping to the type where you can just replace the bulbs. So far, this work had taken about 3.5 days, and I was now tidying up to go home again. Just before going, I got my dad to check the brake lights while I pressed the pedal. Nothing. I'll need to look at that next time. This felt like a relatively successful visit. I went from no electrics working at all to electrics more or less working, except on the dip on one side and the right-hand side indicator. Oh, and I need to do the brake lights. And I did press the horn button, but I only heard the relay, so I need to look at that. And the washer pumper didn't work. And I think the fog light relay is broken, which I didn't get a chance to look at in detail. And I cannot test the reversing lights without the gearbox installed. So electrics, halfway done. Hope you enjoyed. Do come back next time, which hopefully will be a bit sooner.